Welcome back. This is Signature TV and you are in the morning show. We have live in the studio with us Nzai Chimaroke Nwosu. He is a marketing and business consultant and analyst. I mean, virtually everything has been impacted by inflation. Virtually everything. The clothes you wear, the food you eat, transportation that you use to move from one place to another. There's virtually everything. In fact, if you look at the numbers from last year up until now, things have skyrocketed much more than 50%. In some places, in fact, even 100%. Today, we're specifically going to be talking about house rents. Yes. How has inflation impacted house rents? First, let's welcome our guests in the studio. Good to have you. Good morning.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Thank you for having me.
How do you do?
Fine.
I mean, how much of Nigeria's inflation you think has affected rents in Nigeria?
Thank you for inviting me once more to discuss about this German issue. You know, right from the word go, the renting issue in Nigeria has been the first target of inflation, call it in the village, in the urban area, in the city centers, and wherever in Nigeria. Because Nigeria focuses on, it's a mixed economy, let me put it that way, where people use mostly what they have to get what they don't have. If you use Enugu here, for instance, you see that people who landlords in Enugu here, because they don't do anything except to develop houses, they gather all their burden on that investment, which is a fixed investment for that matter. So that whatever they want to get in life is on the building. So because government are not helping them, there is no social security plan or policy that help individual citizens in Nigeria, whether the young or the old. So if you have got a house, that is only social security you have got for yourself. That's the protection, that's the security, that's the defense, that's the feeding, everything you have spent on that particular house. That is how inflation go to the root of affecting rent. Because if I don't have a business that I'm doing out there, except the house I've got, virtually all the tenants have in that particular building, we pay my bills. Whether my bills to drink pure water, to feed daily, to clothe myself, to transport myself from one point to another, or do another investment, will be from those particular tenants. That is how renting is being affected by daily inflation in the country.
But shouldn't that be curbed by government policies on housing? I mean, if everybody goes around doing what you say, like, oh, well, since I'm not working, I have a property. All I need to do is just to, you know what, wake up one morning and, you know, put this in at 5 million. Whatever, just put it at 5 million and bear the consequences. Maybe wakes up and says, you know what, let's put it at 10 million. Is it supposed to be subjected to personal disposition or personal, are there not supposed to be policies that will check some of these things?
Unfortunately, the people who are supposed to make those policies are the ones also investing in those areas.
Whoa.
The governors of this world in Nigeria, the chairman of local government, the commissioners, the ministers, call them names. If you look around, you can see that they have one estate here, one estate here, one estate here. This is the only thing the thing that is steady for them. They may invest in business. They don't even have, they have trust deficit. They can't even invest in their relative, so to say, while in office. So if they have invested in the area which they say they will see, it means that if they do policy that will undo that particular sector, they are also shooting themselves on the leg. So unfortunately, no policy of government will affect housing or renting per se to the extent where it will be an outcome affair, where the poor, the middle class will benefit from it. No, they won't do it. That is their own investment. I can go on and telling you names, even though we are aware of those who have been in government before, who have used public funds, so to say, to invest in real estate, only for them to use that as a retirement benefit for themselves and their families. So would they be fair to themselves if they go out there and say, make policy that will now affect and benefit those areas for the masses? The answer for me is no. But that is what it should be. There have been housing policies, national housing policy. In fact, from the UN, we have housing policies from UN, which countries in the world signed treaty to our signatory to domesticate it in the countries like Nigeria, come to the states. If there's anything we can do better in this country, Nigeria, today, is to provide a living shelter for everyone. Because every raw material that you need to build a house in this country, Nigeria, are in abundance. Is it cement? We have the raw material. Is it sand? Is it water? What? Just tell me what. Which one thing that makes up a housing that you can use to build a house? You have it in abundance in every state of the federation.
So since we have these things in abundance, what exactly is the factor driving the cost of rent in Nigeria that makes it keep increasing every now and then?
The factor driving it, one, is greed.
Greed.
So it's not even on the cost of building materials?
No, it's not the cost of, but if you know, the house or housing sector is what we call a fixed asset. In that, it's not a variable asset, so to say. It's a fixed asset. It means that if you build a house now, a house you build today may stay up to 100 days.
Of course.
I think so. If you spend 1,000 building or 100,000 building a house, a room, you don't expect to get that 100,000 naira back within the first month that you have opened that house.
True.
Over time,
you get it.
Over time, you get it. I think. But the greed, what we have here in the country, have made it that people who build house today will want to collect maybe 2, 3, 4 months, a year's rent, so that they can be able to at least get 50% of that investment. They now see it as an investment to make money from. But housing is a social investment that benefits everyone.
Everybody.
Because if you look at it, when you look at the theory of needs, basic necessities in life, when you talk about food, the next thing is shelter. Are you getting me? So if it's the number 2 needs that man will have to live, it means that you don't need to even put much about it. You understand? So, but what we have got here, the government are not to be trusted because they're not doing a lot. People who should be in that industry, who are government policy makers, are also investing in those areas, are also investing in that area to make money for themselves and their families. Unborn, so to say. So we have lost that particular hope for the government corridor. Then the masses, the citizens that are left on their own, to fend on their own, will do everything humanly possible. Because we are in a mixed economy, any price you think you want to put for your house, put. The highest thing you can do, you can carve a niche for your own house. Maybe put 1 or 2 facilities on it and say this is for a hybrid house. Know the kind of people you take in as tenants. You know, somebody will say, "Come, this house for rent." When you see a tenant that come for it, say, "No, I don't. What do you work?" Say, "I work in the Signature Television." You look at it. You may not. Will you pay for this rent? Say, no.
Why is it always like? Why do landlords tend to look at you and size your pockets?
That's because they want to get their money instanta.
And most times they say, "Oh, if you're not married, you can't live here."
Not if at this day, because of the advent of all this, in quote, Yahoo money that we're making now, nobody talking about marriage again now. People can even forge marriage certificate or whatever. I think what they talk about now is money, real money. So the marriage issue now is not an issue. If you cannot take care of a marriage or family or what they need, the marriage is outside there. But if you have money, whether you are 10 or 15 or 20 years old, why you have the money to pay for this house, even if you may not be able to renew the rent when it expires, they want to give it to you, but they need that immediate cash. Tomorrow, if you don't pay again, they look for another person who can pay. That's the mentality we have. That's why I say greed is the first thing. Greed in the part of the government who should make the policy, greed in the part of the citizens. And because of that, no person in that angle, those who can be able to build the house, will want you to say they want to put a policy that will regularize rent. It doesn't happen.
When you say greed on the side of the people, what do you mean? How is greed on the side of the people a reason why house rent is expensive?
You know, when we talk about greed, is put it as a kind of want. We have need, we have want in economy, for instance. Because this may be my need for coming to this particular interview. I don't need more than this. But because I feel that maybe I'm coming here to just show myself, I will come here with both the ones I need and the ones I don't need, with encyclopedia, with this and with that, to show you that this guy I have read this, my brain have. Is that all? But what I needed is just this.
Just this one.
This.
Okay.
Let's
be more practical.
Yeah.
Let's be more practical. And most times when you want to pay for a house, you have the agent's fee, the lawyer fee, the house rent, and every other thing. And then most times, you have to, the first payment is about, maybe let's give an instance of 500,000 naira, and subsequent ones you can pay 200,000. So giving you an increase of 300,000 naira, which is outside the rent. And some other times people have the mindset that it's the, in quote, the Yahoo boys that make house rents more expensive because they show that they can afford to pay for it. But from your own opinion, what do you think actually fuels this problem?
Okay, what fueled the problem is that that the government had abandoned their duty to regulate the sector. If the government are regulating the sector, I don't think what we are experiencing today will happen. The reason is that I've stayed in Abuja for a while. There is a law that guides whatever you charge for any service or any product you get. There are law that guides it. For instance, in the issue of housing or the rent, if you are paying 100,000 naira worth of rent, maybe per annum, the agent who in quote may be registered or not registered will only get 5% and not more than of what payment you make. And that payment comes from the person who receives it, not from you. You understand? The lawyer who prepares that document is a lawyer to the landlord, not to the tenant who is coming in. So if we prepare a document that to bind our contract together, should I be the one to pay it? But because of, let's say, I don't want to use the word ignorant, but we are all exposed. Because of impatience of those who are also looking for the houses. If I don't get it now, I have lost everything. They went ahead doing the wrong thing just to get the house. If a lawyer tells you a house of 100,000, let's say you should pay 50,000 naira for legal fee. Legal fee from where? Who is to pay for the legal fee? You only pay, landlord pays you whatever the landlord should pay, maybe 30% of it will come from the tenant. The 70 will come from the landlord, and I will pay when I must have practiced assess the house. Because most times when you do a agreement, the agreement will be given to the tenant to go and study before signing. But what they do now is that we want you to sign it immediately and blackmail you to do the wrong thing because you want to get a house. And we will always do it with good mind. But if the government must do the right thing, it happened during Fashola in Lagos as a governor. They put regulation on the rent and made it that nobody collects more than 1 year rent from any tenant or any would-be tenant. And the percentage agency is as the law provides. And they have monitoring team or commission or agency, what they call it, to monitor, go areas to see if a house is on, they must have registered that house. But what we do here at Enugu, for instance, is that they only come to you when they are building the foundation. They want to collect the money, building permit, this permit, and they will go. So when you want to rent the house, if it's a commercial building, they don't care about it because they have already collected the money. The gain we are going to make from the house for the next 3, 4, 5 years from one particular agency. So when you want to put your price for your house, they will look the other way around and allow you to do whatever you want to do because they know they are part of this.
I mean, but to be fair to landlords who build houses, the price of cement in 2020, it's not the price of cement now.
The price of cement is about 10,000.
In 2020?
No, now.
Now, yes. But then it was like...
It was 4,000,
3,700, 4,000. That's 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And that's like twice the amount.
Yeah.
That's a huge leap.
Increment, yeah.
You don't expect someone who has that jump, that leap, would give you the same amount of rent, that somebody who built his house in in 2020. Don't you think inflation also causes this too?
The issue is that we don't use data to make some plans or some policies. If you check at the per capita income of people in Enugu, for instance, by budget results or research or reports, Enugu has annual revenue of 4.3 billion as of 2022. Then, if you look at Jotobi with the population of Enugu, say plus or minus 4 million people, as the case may be, you know that Enugu citizens, their per capita income is within the neighborhood of 1,000 something. It's not to say that they don't do other things they make money from, but because the government, nobody can be able to go into real estate or building commercial houses without having extra source of income to fund those things. Outside the country, people go for mortgage system to fund the commercial houses. In fact, nobody builds his own house. It's all about mortgage.
Yeah.
So I wonder how someone or a state whose citizen has less than 10,000 naira per capita income can allow citizens to build houses, maybe 6 flats in a one that runs into millions. Where does that money come from? Is it that they plug the money from trees or where? So you see that the government is not doing enough on that aspect. So that is where our problem lies.
Right. So in solving this matter now, because again, like it or leave it, we've highlighted some of the reasons why these things come up. Inflation, the fact that some of these agents, even on their own, inflate these amounts, lawyer fee. I think there's one called caution fee, right?
Gosh, yeah.
There's a
Yeah, security fee and whatever.
All sorts of fees. And then sometimes when a rent is 500,000, at the end of the day, you are paying even much more or even close to the amounts for the rent. Yeah. And it's just crazy. But then in driving some of these initiatives that you are actually advocating, it is quite difficult to create policies that would really impact the housing system, because you have also said that those who are in power are the owners of these buildings. They will not do laws or create laws that would affect them, that would impact them. So what happens? I mean, are we going to be like this? Is it like it's a helpless situation? Because you can't even tell people not to rent houses. They would. It's a necessity. Yeah. You must live under a roof. Except you want to live under the bridge, or maybe under the tree. So you must live under a roof. So what happens? Do people stop renting houses? Do they do protests? Should they call government? How do they call government attention to this? Like, where do we go from here?
I will take it in three approach. One, the citizen have a role to play. Two, the industry, that when I mean the industry, those who are into housing development, has also regulators have a role to play, and the government has a role to play. The government will recourse themselves from any person who is into government from investing, direct investment or personal investment into housing scheme, and allow the agencies created for housing development to do the bidding in that aspect. And they must do it considering the income or level of income of their citizens.
It's not even possible, because the housing developments are usually under government. Yeah. It's not even a private, except you are talking about private.
When I say the government officials go into housing development individually, if the government can do a policy to stop them, okay, at least when they are in government, they should not venture into such approach, but allow the agencies meant to handle that aspect. By that doing, the agencies will know that yes, the house they are building is mass houses. Because what we have here in Enugu, for the latest combat in Enugu, is that they don't build mass houses in Enugu. What you see they build is duplexes everywhere they created any particular estate. You can't see 2-bedroom, 1-bedroom flat, 3-bedroom flat, the case may be, for the middle class or the low income earners. That had defeated the sense of housing. If you say you have a policy for housing for all in 2020 or 2000, if from the word go, we have been talking about housing policies, but no one has been enforced or implemented till date. That's why I have this. Then secondly, the regulators who are the one overseeing this housing, the raw material for housing, the cement, whatever, can have a policy that will make the cost of materials for building to be affordable. Be affordable, so to say. So that if you, after building a commercial house, you can, a house that you are supposed to build for 10 million, you use 100 million because of inflation and cost of material. You can always, you want to get the money. You want to get the money. I think. But if the regulators in that industry can say, no, enough is enough, and put those, manage the cost of all this material. If you build a house for 10 million for sake, you cannot run that risk of trying to check. The citizens on the earth should begin to form advocacy units, to cry, to raise their voices, to agitate that the cost of living on aspect of housing is high. And by the time these three departments that are beneficiary or consumers of this particular industry comes together, you can now have, we like call it, a summit, housing summit, where all the stakeholders will be brought under a roof and say, where do we go from here? And that housing summit will be a zero summit, a zero platform, where you don't have a government that will superintend a law or policy over the citizen. Or have an agency who will say, no, we don't want it. Level it up so that the truth can be told that this is what we need. If housing is, or shelter is a basic necessity of life, then we must give it attention that it deserves. And make sure that, yes, people who live, for instance, in Enugu here, have reason to say they live in Enugu. But it's not about building the house that matters. It's about the facilities in those houses that determine the prices of that particular rent.
Yeah.
Enugu don't have water. You know that very well. Most houses you see today that are built and put prices on it, you can't have running water in your bedroom or your kitchen. You still spend money buying water.
Yeah.
And for you to buy a 500 liter GP tank today, you cannot pay anything less than 15,000 naira.
Yeah.
No matter how the government of the day preach that they want to do water in 180 days. Up till now, people, even the city centers here, don't have water.
True.
So we start from there. If I can't have water for a house I'm parking in, that has no use. When I'm spending, if my rent per month is 30,000 naira or 45,000 naira, I paid more than 50,000 naira buying water for a month. Who is fooling who? We are looking at only the cost of the principal cost of the house. You don't look at the other things you need to manage the house for that period of time. You look at the money, the service charge of you as an individual managing your house where you're living outweighs the cost of the house you have paid for the period of that year. That's where we have problems. So these things are all inclusive in trying to determine the cost of house that we live in. Location mapping is also important. Like in Lagos, that area you cannot charge. You have hybrid areas where the people live. We have low-cost areas and middle-class areas. If we want a house rent to be manageable, to be affordable, to have a human face, we can begin to look at locations. Successive governments in this Enugu have failed to expand Enugu as a city. Enugu is not expanding, I'm sorry to say that. And for that reason, everyone wants to live in the city center and pay the cost of that. Look at where we are today. This is a Tinker's Corner. But if not Sullivan are brought here, we wouldn't have this bush before. People don't come here. What has the next government done to make sure that we expand this Tinker's Corner, at least have it occupied fully? We have lost 8 years. The current government now, what are they doing to say, okay, let us push and expand this city? Pushing is not about building houses there. Providing infrastructures, road network, electricity, water, and what have you, schools, healthcare, those environments. So people can want to leave those areas and do their business whatever they are.
Okay.
And it will reduce the cost of housing in the...
On a final note, really, I mean, in the highbrow area of Enugu, how much do you think a 2-bedroom flat should go for? And for the middle area of Enugu, and then for the low class, how much do you think 2 rooms, 3 rooms, or 1 room can go for?
Looking at Enugu is a civil service state, and looking at the income ratio of Enugu, housing or rent is paid from what you have been paid from. The basic monument breakdown is your housing, your transport, I think your feeding. These are what makes your salary. So if your salary is 100,000 per se, and your transport takes 30,000 naira in a month, your feeding takes say 40,000. That's 70. 30,000 for your housing. Any house you're going to live that will take above monthly that amount of your housing that is provided for you is a wrong one. So for me, I think the housing rates for the city centers in here, 2-bedroom flat, for instance, if it goes for 300,000 naira, it's not a bad one.
City center.
It's like New Heaven now.
Yeah.
If you rooms. If you go for that, the reality of it. But we can never. Yeah, but I'm looking at Enugu.
Okay, you're just
as a civil service state.
Yes,
I think
based on the income.
Yes.
Per capita.
But if you look at the area where you have businesses, maybe say between 350, 500. What you need to, I think, an annual thing, you need to renew it. And for some countries, they pay rent per month.
Yeah.
Once you take your salary, you pay her.
Rent, yeah.
So assuming you're being charged from source, from your salary.
Yes.
And you are paying salary of 100,000 naira, housing is 30,000, and you are paying 70,000 naira for housing. Will you eat? Will you go to work? You can't. So a 3-bedroom flat in the city center, 500, is not a bad one. The annual fixed rent. Then in the sub areas, 250, between 250 for 2-bedroom flat, 200, 250 to about the 400,000 naira.
I just wish that you are saying.
Then if you live for duplex, you want to live for duplex, say 1.2, 1.5, depending on how the facility is. It's not a bad one, I think, for those hybrid exclusive areas. Mm-hmm. But to tell you the truth, Enugu housing policy is poor. The government of the day need to do. I thank God for Peter Mbah government, the infrastructural development or whatever. He needs to do more, focus more on the housing development. People are suffering in Enugu here. Let the housing development agency or whatever do more. They said they are doing is only for the high income earners, not for middle class, not for low class. I have not seen, except during Okpara, those days, I have not seen where they build 1-bedroom flat, 2-bedroom flat, 3-bedroom flat in a cluster. What you now see they do is duplex and bungalows. And they say it to the highest bidder. Most of them you see today are empty. People who buy them live in America, live in Canada, live in Europe. They buy it and lock it there. Then lizard and what have you, spider will go and occupy it. Meanwhile, we're looking for houses. The policy of housing should change.
Absolutely.
It should change.
Absolutely.
So that's what I can say for that. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you so much for your time on the show. Nze Chimaroke Nwosu is a marketing and business consultant speaking to us on the topic hiking cost of rent in Nigeria. Many thanks for your time. Really
God bless you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
And so we're back shortly after this to stay with us.
Save Nature TV. News in your pocket.